You ever have one of those mornings that starts off just fine and then flips so fast it feels like the universe decided to test your soul? Yeah, this was one of those. It was 8:07 a.m. when Maurice Langston pulled up in front of the Westbridge County Courthouse. The sun hadn't fully cleared the skyline yet, and the parking lot still held on to that early morning quiet, the kind that makes you feel like maybe the day's going to be okay. Maurice stepped out of his car, chest high, head clear. He was wearing his signature brown corduroy blazer, the same one he wore every hearing, and under it was his pride and joy. 20 years of growing, grooming, and honoring a thick, majestic chest of hair. Now, I know that might sound odd, but to Maurice, that chest hair wasn't just hair. It was a legacy, a connection to his roots. His grandfather had it, his father had it, and now he carried it like a badge. That morning, he walked into the courthouse like he always did, calm, respectful, and focused. But he had no idea that the next hour would be one of the most humiliating and powerful moments of his life. At the security checkpoint, everything started to feel off. The bailiff, a bulky white guy with a crooked badge and a chip on his shoulder, locked eyes with Maurice the moment he stepped in. Name was Officer Greeley. The man had the kind of posture that screams power trip. You know the type. Walks like he owns every inch of public space. Greeley raised his hand. "You, sir, step aside. Secondary screening." Maurice blinked. "Is there a reason?" "No reason needed," Greeley shot back. "Random check." But it wasn't random. You could feel it. Everyone in line felt it. Maurice, always composed, nodded and followed without fuss. They led him into a small side room. No windows, just a metal table, a chair, and the cold hum of fluorescent lights. And right there on the side table, a pair of electric clippers. "You can't be serious," Maurice said, his voice low but firm. "What is this?" Greeley smirked, leaned against the wall like he was waiting for applause. "Gotta make sure you're not hiding anything under that jungle on your chest." Maurice took a step back. "You have no cause for this. I haven't refused a search, and you have no legal basis." "You don't get to argue," Greeley barked. "Strip down." At that moment, something inside Maurice cracked. But he didn't explode. He knew better. He stood still, looked Greeley dead in the eye, and said, "I do not consent." Didn't matter. 2 officers stepped in. They restrained him like he was a threat, and while one held his arms down, the other, Greeley, took those buzzing clippers and shaved his chest bare. 20 years of pride, torn away in under 2 minutes. The hair fell in patches, like pieces of himself hitting the floor. Greeley laughed, said something like, "Now you don't look like you're hiding a damn forest under there." And when it was done, they left him alone, half-dressed, chest raw and stinging, clothes wrinkled, dignity in tatters. But here's the twist, y'all. Maurice Langston wasn't just some random man coming to court that day. He was the court, presiding judge, federal appointment, the man who signed off on the very security protocols Greeley had just violated. And Greeley? He didn't have a clue, because to him, Maurice was just another black man who looked out of place. 10 minutes later, Maurice walked into courtroom 3B, robe on, hairless chest burning under the fabric. And when Greeley spotted him sitting at the bench, oh, that man turned pale as drywall. Maurice didn't acknowledge him, not yet. He ran his courtroom like always, fair, measured, no theatrics. But behind that calm voice, behind that neutral expression, there was a storm building. Now let me back up a sec. This wasn't the first complaint about Greeley. Over a dozen filed over the past 6 years, most ignored. Some resolved with no follow-up. A few just disappeared. And you want to hear something that'll twist your stomach? The courthouse had internal memos from years back. One literally said, "Greeley may be aggressive, but he keeps order, especially with certain types." Yeah, certain types. So, as Maurice listened to witnesses testify about other abuse incidents, you could feel the air in that room change. It wasn't just a hearing anymore, it was a reckoning. One officer after another testified to seeing Greeley intimidate, harass, and humiliate people, mostly black men. One guy, arrested by Greeley in 2012 for loitering inside the courthouse waiting for his own hearing. Another, slammed into a wall for raising his voice after his daughter's custody case got dismissed. And then came Reverend Elijah Brooks, 73, quiet man, wore a brown coat and trembling hands. He took the stand and said, "Judge Langston, I'm here because no one ever listened when I said that man hurt me. But today, you're here, and that means something." It was silent for a long time after that. Maurice, this man who'd been violated just hours earlier, stood, looked around, and asked, "Is there anyone else who's experienced harm from Officer Greeley?" Hands went up. Dozens. A janitor, a law student, even one of the court clerks. Turns out everyone knew something, but no one had ever said it out loud. Until now. By afternoon, the Department of Justice had arrived with an envelope. Federal oversight was being activated. The courthouse was under investigation. And Greeley? He was placed under arrest in that very building, in front of every single person he'd ever intimidated. And Maurice? He didn't stop there. He took off his robe, folded it, laid it across his chair. Then he said, "This isn't about revenge. This is about responsibility. What happened to me should never happen to anyone, and I'm going to make damn sure it never happens again." He sentenced Greeley to the maximum penalties: abuse of power, civil rights violations, obstruction, a full 12 years behind bars. But then, he added something that stuck with me. He leaned in, calm but sharp as a blade, and said, "You spent your career deciding who deserved dignity and who didn't. You wore that badge like a crown. But today, you answer to the law." And he turned away, chest bare, scars visible, but his head held higher than ever. That night, Maurice walked out of the courthouse with no tie, no cover, no shame, just himself. And when he stepped onto the sidewalk, people were waiting, not press, not lawyers, just folks who'd been watching from afar, waiting for someone to stand up. An old woman placed her hand on his arm and whispered, "You did what we all dreamed of doing." The next morning, the courthouse lobby looked different. Greeley's picture was gone. The tone had shifted. People sat straighter, spoke softer. They knew. And when Judge Langston walked into the courtroom for a simple civil hearing, everyone stood, before the clerk even called him in. Because it wasn't just about rules anymore. It was about justice. And justice now had a new face. 1 week later, Congress announced a review of courthouse security nationwide. 1 month later, Judge Langston received the Presidential Medal of Justice. And in the front row, his clerk Naomi, Reverend Brooks, even one of Greeley's former victims, now an intern in law school. But the last shot? Cut to a prison TV room. Officer Greeley watching the ceremony on a grainy screen, silent, jaw tight. For the first time in his life, powerless. And across that screen, Maurice Langston looked right into the camera. No robe, no blazer, just his voice. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about every person who was told they didn't belong. Every man humiliated for no reason. Every voice silenced. This is for you. Now tell me that ain't justice. If you've ever been judged by how you look instead of who you are, drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. Was this justice served, or just the beginning of something bigger? Because I don't know about you, but I think this courtroom fight was just the first round."